Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're really excited to be talking about what goes on inside the recording studio here at WellSaid Labs. Now, if you're at this webinar, I'm guessing that you probably are already familiar with our products. You've maybe been in studio or you're an API customer. Maybe you have your own custom voice. But if you haven't had a chance to check us out, please do go to wellsaidlabs.com and you can sign up for a free trial there. But if you are already one of our customers or have been in a free trial, you know how incredible the voice avatars that our voice team creates are. And so I am so thrilled to have one of our experts with us here today. We have Sara Weisweaver from our voice team who is going to share the secrets of how they're able to build these incredible voice avatars with us. Sara, thank you so much for having this conversation with me today.
Hi, Carolyn. Thanks for having me. For those of you that have never met me, I'm Sara Weisweaver. I'm our voice program manager at WellSaid Labs. And as Carolyn said, I work with our voice talent, everything from deciding which voices we're going to put next into our library, auditioning new talent, signing new talent, and creating our avatars, their personalities, and then facilitating the training, and then deciding when those new voices get launched into studio. I work really closely with our voice team, our core tech team. To the extent that I'm also helping coordinate our release of our new model, which is coming out soon, V10. And I also run our content moderation program here. So ensuring that the content that comes through our system is in agreement with our terms of service. So a variety of hats.
Definitely. Now, Sara is very modest, but every time I'm around her, I learn incredible things about what she's doing with the voice team, what's coming next, how they're making our voices even better with each version release that we do. So I think we're going to learn a lot today about some of these inside secrets here. Just a couple quick announcements before we get started. I did have the chat turned off. Sorry about that. It's on now. So please go ahead and introduce yourselves in there as we get started if you'd like. Also, you can enter questions in the Q&A section throughout the webinar, and we'll answer those probably mostly at the end, but I'll keep an eye on them in case there are some that we want to hit on our way or during the webinar itself. And then one last thing, we will be recording this entire conversation and sending a replay recording as well as posting it on our blog and our social media. So if you need to jump for a meeting or something, don't worry, we'll have all of this captured for you to check out later. All right, so what are we going to talk about today? A few of the things we want to cover with Sara. We want to just do a quick overview of where the studio is today, what kind of avatars we have in there, kind of how that came into being. And then we're going to get into the basics of how we create the actual avatars themselves. Everything from finding voice actors to training our data models and releasing them into studio. We'll talk about how Sara and the voice team plan the future of the avatar library in terms of making sure we have the voices that our customers need. And we also want to talk about how we work with voice actors, because this might surprise people to know, but that's a huge part of your job, right, Sara? Like,
Yes.
we can't do this without them.
Yes.
Absolutely. And then we'll finish up with what's coming up next with the studio and our voice avatar library, and also get to those questions that you have. So again, put those in the Q&A area and we'll get to those at the end as we go. Okay, so Sara, let's start out with what's currently in the WellSaid studio. Can you give us just kind of an overview of what we've got so far?
Yeah, happy to. So currently we have 49 unique voice avatars in our studio. Most of our voices are in US English. We do have some voices that are native speakers of English in South Africa, in the UK, including England and Ireland and Scotland, and a couple Australian voices. We're always looking to expand our offerings across a variety of dialects. We are introduced. We have one kind of region-specific US voice that's outside of kind of what we consider broadcast English, and we're hoping to expand on those voices as well. When we plan out our library, we think really carefully about, do we have kind of a good representation of a variety of linguistic styles, ages. We try to make sure that we have a good kind of balance of male and female voices. We do have a non-binary voice that's coming onto the studio soon, as well as we've been auditioning lately for gender non-conforming voices. And we also ensure that we have voices that are a range of racial representations as well. So right now, our library is fairly balanced, leans a little bit more towards US English since that's where we're primarily located. And we're, like I said, expanding outside of that kind of primary audience.
Great. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump in a bit to some of the basics of how we create those voices. And we sort of mentioned this in the beginning, but it's all going to start with the voice actors. So obviously, one question we can answer right off the bat, do our AI voice avatars come from humans? Yes, they do.
Yes. Yes, humans that we have cultivated relationships with. So one of the biggest things that we believe is that we are here to be a partner to voice talent. So synthetic voice is a really powerful tool for content creators to be able to use, to be able to create content kind of on scale on their own terms. It also allows for dynamic experiences. So you think about like virtual assistants or kind of like video creation on demand sorts of products that need voice at all times. AI voice allows people to create these kinds of experiences and to, utilize voice and to create meaningful learning or listening experiences on their own terms. And, this is a lot of work that voice talent can't physically do. Like you can't have somebody in a booth 24/7 reading script on demand. So when we partner with voice talent, we we kind of talk to them about this is what our users use WellSaid for. They very much understand like that they are creating a synthetic voice, and a lot of our voice talent are really interested in in what it means to have like a synthetic version of their likeness. And for many of them, it's kind of a fascinating experience to even just go through the process of recording the content and then working collaboratively with me to come up with a name for their voice and an image for their voice. That's always really trippy for them. Like, what does my voice likeness look like other than me? And then they have this, the synthetic version of their voice that's out there through the WellSaid portal, taking on work for them, and that they earn, passive revenue stream from. So yes, they're built off of the voices of real people that we have cultivated relationships with, and that, it becomes a source of income for them as well.
Wonderful. Yeah, and we're going to talk a bit more about that in the voice actor section. Can you talk a little bit about what is it you need from the voice actor in order to start creating an avatar?
Yeah. So the first thing that we always make sure is, once I've listened to the auditions and we know that this is a style that we want and this is the kind of delivery that would work well in our studio, and we make sure that they sign a consent form that dictates the terms of how we use their voice, and that they know this is, that's a hard requirement for us, that we make sure everybody knows this is what's happening. But once the agreements are in place, there isn't really much. We need a few hours of recorded content. We provide scripts. The scripts are just there to help them deliver the style that their end likeness is going to be delivering. And then we go from there. That's it.
All right, so you need a couple hours of recorded speech. And what are those scripts like? Can it just be anything off the internet? Can they read a recipe book or?
Yeah, that's a great question. Technically, it can be anything, any kind of written text. To make the highest quality voice, it's very important that the style of delivery and the pacing of delivery and the volume fluctuations are fairly consistent. So to help our voice actors to enable them to give us that delivery that helps us make the highest quality voice, we curate scripts that make that easy, right? So like for a conversational style script, we will have actual conversations where the voice actor is reading both parts of the conversation, for instance.
Hmm.
And that way it helps them deliver deliver the conversational style in a very natural way so that they're not so it doesn't end up feeling artificial. Naturalness is super important to us because we know, that's what we pride ourselves on. These are human voices. So helping our humans who are making these voices with us be as natural as they can is really important at the creation stage.
Absolutely. Okay, so we have these recordings. And again, this is a science that it has taken years for many people to figure out. But if you can just kind of share with us, how do we go about sort of mapping what a sound corresponds to a letter, and how do we make
Yes.
text turn into that speech after the fact?
So we have this tiny wizard and no, I'm just kidding. That's not,
I
it
know I
feels
asked
like
that
that
very
though.
eloquently. I was like, the
um,
sounds from the words.
yeah. We have our 2 hours of content. We have the text that the voice actor read from. We have the audio file that matches one-to-one with their text. We have those two files, right? We have like a text document, we have a WAV file, and we run a thank you, Marta. We run a speech to text process where we tell the AI, so, this sound that happens around this section maps onto these graphemes, so these letters. And so we get this kind of connection. And the funny thing, I guess maybe the surprising thing for a lot of people is that the AI is not learning words or letters, it's learning sounds. So the entire soundscape of that WAV file in that section where those letters are happening, it's learning all of those sounds. So people will often say like, oh, your voices sound so realistic because you inserted breaths. It's like, well, we didn't actually insert breaths. The voice actor had breaths in their recordings. And so the AI learned, oh, these kinds of sounds happen around these kinds of symbols. And yeah, so we do the alignment, and then we give this data to the AI, and it learns the entire soundscape around these letters so that it knows, like when our users go in and type text in, the AI knows what kinds of sounds to predict for those letters.
And it's not just learning from that particular voice actor's 2 or 3 or 4 hours of recording, right? It's drawing on all of the recordings that you've ever fed into the wizard.
That's right. Yes, very hungry wizard. Yes, so we every time we train a voice, and that's what we call it. We call it training the voice. So that's the terminology we use when we give the AI this, text and WAV file data set. That voice trains alongside all of the other voices we've ever trained, and not just for English either. We have trained some voices outside of English, and the AI is learning all of these sounds all at one time. So that's why we're able to get away with just a small amount of recording. When we first started out, we required so many hours of recording from our voice actors because we needed it. We needed all of the data for the voice to sound great. And now, we've been doing this for a while. We've been training for a while. Our AI has gotten smarter, but also we have all of this, all of these hours and hours of content that each voice is learning from as it becomes its own voice too.
Wow. Yeah, that's just incredible. And I don't want to, give away too much, but I did have to tease our next version that's coming out next month is even more human-like. It reads scripts like a voice actor would. It's incredible.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you. It's amazing to see how the AI is progressing. Um, it's also really interesting to see the ways in which it still isn't a replacement for human for some things, right? So like that's one of the things our voice actors ask is like, is AI going to completely replace human voice actors? And we always see WellSaid as a partner. With the technology that WellSaid offers, we are able to allow content that may not have had the budget for voice to become voiced. So we're seeing an increase in just voiced content in the world at large. And we see ourselves as enabling, a voiced future.
absolutely. I see a question in the chat, which I think is interesting about questions themselves
Yes.
beginning to sound more natural with the AI voices. And I would say that's definitely something people will notice in the next version, right?
I think so. We have had some people tell us in our beta testing for the new model, like, wow, the questions sound so much more natural. It's amazing how natural they sound. And we've had some people say, I don't really know if that I've noticed a difference in questions. So yet to be determined exactly. But I know that from my own experience and my own testing, some of the questions the AI just knocks out of the park the first try, and it's pretty incredible. Um, Questions are interesting from that like sound alignment conversation we are talking about earlier. So if you think about how somebody delivers a question, the intonation for that question is so different, right? So I say like, did you go to school today? That's an upward inflection at the end. What was your favorite thing you did at school today?
Ah,
Totally different, right? So you have all of these different vocal patterns around the question mark. And when the AI sees a question mark, it's pulling on all of these sounds, right? Like, so sometimes it's dun dun dun, sometimes it's dun dun dun. And so it's making a prediction based on like, there's so many different fluctuations to what happens around that little symbol sound wise.
absolutely. So it's an ongoing process. Um, so once we have the recordings, we've trained our algorithm on these recordings. Before we release it to the library, what's the QA process like there? We need to do a little more refining, make sure it sounds good to everybody. Can you talk a little bit about how you finalize the voice before it goes into the library?
Yeah, happy to. So something we've learned is that because the AI is learning the entire soundscape, if there's a kind of fairly like loud noise floor, or if there's any kind of feedback from the mic, the AI is learning those sounds too. And sometimes there's certain sounds that the AI just really amplifies. So you might not hear it as much in the training data, but you hear it or notice it more in the final synthetic voice. So we do a couple QA points. One of the main things we do now when we begin recording is we have the voice actor send us very raw audio. So no post-processing on their end, as high of a mic gain as they can get. So we have as much data as we can get. And then we have our audio engineer normalize it so that our voices are fairly consistent. And we're continually building toward that kind of like consistency of the feel of the audio. And so once our audio engineer has processed all of our files, we train the voice. And sometimes even then we're surprised to hear like, you know what, this voice still sounds louder than we like, the noise floor is louder than we'd like. So we have had to benchmark a few voices, not benchmark, sideline. I'm really bad at sports analogies.
Well, you're talking to the wrong person. We're
Yes.
going to make it worse.
It doesn't stop me from trying to use them, but I should stop. We sideline them, I think is what I'm trying to say. And then we'll work with that voice actor to say, like, let's see if we can get your audio quality a little bit better. We've had voice actors borrow mics from us before, record in different spaces. We've had them record in, we've paid for a studio for them to record in. We've had some voice actors that have worked with us for like 4 or 5 months and just have been really like determined to get their avatar out there because they they're so committed to like wanting to be a voice on our library. And we keep working with them, you know, to get it to happen. So
And you said too, sometimes they'll listen to a voice and decide, this is a good narration style, but I think I could do a more, conversational
yes,
too, or like they
yes.
want to offer multiple options.
Yes. So people ask us that too, you know, like why do some of your voices only have a narration style, or why do some of your voices only have a promo style? And that's, again, a piece of that is because we are in a collaborative partnership with our voice talents. Some of our voice talents say, you know, I really just do narration. Like I don't have a good promo style. I don't enjoy that kind of content, and I don't think I sound natural in that, and I would rather not. And so we don't, you know, and they do their narration and they're amazing at it, and that's what we can offer. Most of our voice actors are asking me, you know, is there a new style that I can read in? How can I expand the offerings for my avatar? Because they're wanting their avatar to get the most use possible, because it's another revenue stream for them.
Absolutely. Okay, and so let's go on to our next point here where we talk about how we plan that avatar library. We talked a little bit about the different accents that we have and the styles and that kind of a thing, but can you tell us a little bit about how we choose those?
Yeah,
Why you touched on the different styles, but why do we bother with different styles? What does that do for our listener?
yeah, great. Yes, so when we build out our library, we are looking at a variety of data points. Probably the most important one to us is what are our customers asking for? Um, Conversational style, we really wanted to get something in our studio that enabled better cross-avatar interactions. So we have a lot of e-learning users. I was hearing from a lot of our users, you know, I tried to get our two avatars to have this conversation and they just sound really robotic. And yes, they did, because they're doing a narration style, so they're narrating at each other. So
That
how can,
doesn't work. Yeah.
yeah, and that doesn't work, right? So like, how do we build a conversational style where now, you know, it's the same avatar, but it's delivering a much more kind of conversational, casual delivery. And so we we struggled for a long time to figure out like how do we even build scripts around that, how do we enable our voice actors to give that kind of delivery experience, and once we solved those problems and you know got our first kind of round of voice actors to give the conversational style a whirl, it's been pretty incredible to hear the avatars actually sound natural when they're engaging with each other now. And our goal is to you know is to keep expanding each avatar's styles as we can get them recording.
And so again, you have to re-record the same voice actor speaking in the different style if you have multiple ones. So like they would record a narration set and potentially a conversational separately, or yeah, there's not just like a conversational switch you could put on those narration recordings to make it.
Right. Yes, it's a new set of recordings entirely. Yeah.
Okay. And then let's talk a little bit about custom avatars. I know you're, integrally involved in building those with our customers. Why do some people choose to make a custom avatar?
Yeah, that's a great question. Sometimes it's as simple as they want a voice that we don't currently have in our library. So we've had customers who've said, I need somebody that sounds much younger than the voices that you have. Like somebody that sounds genuinely like they could be 16, 17. We had, you know, this was for an education client, where they're creating content for grades 6 through 12 curriculum. So they need somebody that sounds youthful, but kind of confident. And we have a lot of young sounding voices on our platform, but nobody that really quite fit that spot that they needed, that very specific tone. So they created a custom voice. We sourced talent for them for that custom voice. Um, we also have some customers who want a specific branded voice, right? They want a voice that no other WellSaid customers can use. They want they want to craft and hone their own kind of branded listening experiences. And that's a big reason for a lot of people to come to us for custom voices as well. And then I think I saw Chris in the chat.
Chris Black is here. He made a
Yeah,
custom voice
our
with
number
us.
one WellSaid fan.
Yes.
So sometimes we have, people who are themselves like e-learning producers or have their own kind of e-learning product, and they want to streamline their own voice for their narration product, for narration, and so we have some customers of that as well. We'll work on that, Chris. We'll try to get you a hat.
For those of you curious, I am writing a case study about Chris Black and his experience creating a custom voice and also using our API. So stay tuned for that. You'll learn more about this backstory there. So you've also created some custom avatars in other languages. Sometimes, so I guess we could say it all goes back to that experience. Like we need to provide a voice that is appropriate for, maybe it's serious information about a company update, or maybe it's something more, conversational and educational, but coming back to that experience part. Yeah, interesting. Okay. So with that, let's go on to some of the ethics at WellSaid, because as you were kind of mentioning when we were discussing how you plan the library of avatars, a lot of it goes back to, what the voice actors want to do, what they feel comfortable with, what their experience is. And we could talk all day about this, and we have before, you and I, but let's just talk a little bit about some of the ethics of AI voice, working with voice actors and creating these avatars.
Yeah. So, like I said before, the first thing is always we're very transparent about who we are and what we build, and that transparency.
I skipped a slide. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I skip one? Okay, sorry. Go ahead. We'll just go with it.
And Carolyn, for some reason, I'm still only seeing the home screen, which I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me make sure I'm sharing.
But while you're looking at that, yeah, it looks like everyone else is only. There we go. Okay.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I was toggling through the wrong screen share. Okay.
I liked having us in duplicate. There's like the still version of us and then the dynamic version of us. So that was fun.
Okay, so working with voice actors.
There we go. Yes. Yeah. So so again, really upfront, one of the things that is so important in this industry, because there are a lot of complicated conversations around AI voice, and we're aware of them, and we want to make sure that we are transparent with voice talent who have concerns, who are interested in becoming an AI voice, but they're unsure about what that means. When I first meet with a voice actor who's interested in joining us, if I always want, there are a couple things that I always want to make sure that we talk about in that initial meeting. One is I want to make sure that they know that their identity is going to be anonymous. So we've had some voice actors say like, oh, well, I don't really need to have an avatar, like you can just use my picture and my name. And we so strongly prefer and ask that we have an kind of but this is a likeness that is an avatar that is separate and distinct from who the voice actor is. Just this is really powerful technology. We want to make sure that we're using it responsibly. So we always work in collaboration with our voice talent to come up with a new name, come up with an image that looks like it could match the voice, and so that's important. That's one thing that I make sure that we talk about. Another thing is a lot of voice actors will bring this up. Some don't. If they don't, I bring it up. It's what will my voice be used for, and are there any limitations to the kind of content that my voice can create? So I've had some people say like, I would love to become a voice avatar, but I have this like exclusivity clause with this company, so I can't do any like content promoting beer. Um, we
Mm.
we don't place any of those kinds of restrictions on our users, nor are we set up to do the kind of like moderation around that, right? To make sure that our users aren't using that voice for any beer commercials, right? So in those cases, we just have to unfortunately say like, I don't think this will be a good partnership for us. We cannot guarantee to you that that won't happen. Um, we do make sure that our voices are only being used for content that fits our terms of service. So there's a user conduct section of our terms of service that says this content isn't going, the technology can't be used for anything that's sexually explicit, pornographic, hateful, violent, excessively obscene, and we run a thorough content moderation process on our end that we're constantly refining to make sure that that kind of content isn't being created. Some of our voice actors are very appreciative of that. Some are like, well, it's my voice likeness. I don't really care what my voice likeness is doing. So we have a range of opinions on that, but we do internally want to make sure that, that the content people are creating is not doing harm.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting perspective. Sometimes we get feedback that people want to be able to create things that go against our content moderation threshold. And it's like, well, you have to think of it from the voice actor's perspective. How would you feel if you heard certain things being said by your voice in that setting? So,
Yeah.
yes.
And there's some things that get misflagged that are kind of like unfortunate casualties along the way. Like somebody put something in the editor the other day that was like, I'm up to my ass in alligators. Like, which made me laugh so hard and is really
It was
not
me.
why we
No, I'm just kidding.
I knew it was you, Caroline. And that's not why we have the clearly that it's not to rule those kinds of things out. It's for like much heavier content than that. But yes, like I think that just illustrates like we take it seriously and we really care.
I do want to know what was happening in that person's day, though.
I do too, because
Alligators.
it's a great image.
Great. And then you talked a little bit about like in terms of this not replacing voice actors or taking away from their livelihood. Obviously, they're compensated, and a lot of our voice actors use their avatar to do small jobs that they wouldn't necessarily go to a recording studio for, right?
Some do, yeah. And it's so interesting and so valuable to have conversations with our existing voice talent about why they joined WellSaid and why they continue to, be an avatar on our platform. A lot of them say, like one told us it's like, this is my retirement plan. Like my voice is not going to be used. I'm not going to be able to use my voice in this way forever. And but my avatar will be able to voice forever. And this is a way for me to continue making revenue while into my retirement years. So yeah, it's really fascinating to hear from them why they're invested and how this has been beneficial to them.
Hmm. I saw in the chat someone was asking if the avatar images were the actual actors, and I know you said that we preserve their anonymity, but I think it's really cool that they get to help choose them because we want them to be a reflection of the actual person and not our, filtered version of that, whatever that would be.
Yeah, yes. We didn't start off doing it that way. When we were my first job for WellSaid, which was, a little over 2.5 years ago, I came on as a part-time copywriter. And my first job was, listen to these recordings, and we're not going to tell you who the voice actors are, like with their names or their images or anything about them. Just all you can hear is their voice. And tell me their name and what they look like. And that was such a like fun, exciting, frustrating, like ethical minefield of an exercise, right? Just trying to come up with like, well, I don't know. Like I can kind of imagine the personality of this person, and now I'm looking through all kinds of images that I think are around the right age range, of like, does this picture look like the personality that I'm hearing in this voice? And as we've grown and as we've grown out our library, we've kind of rethought that. And it's like, that was a good way to start. I think that was a good kind of experiment to start with, but why not have our voice talent tell us how they want to be represented in the library? And that way they also have some control over, how they're being presented, what kind of personality they think that their voice has, potentially also influencing the kinds of use cases, right? Like this picture kind of looks like it could be for more kind of like serious content, right? Like, so it puts some of that into the hands of the voice talent and lets them have a little bit of control about how they're being presented.
I love that. Okay, so on that similar vein, how do we decide what's going to come next to Studio? What avatars you're going to add? Yeah, how do you prioritize what to add next?
Yeah, so we listen to customers, we listen to what they are wanting and what they're needing. What are they not able to create with WellSaid that they want to? And what kinds of voices and delivery styles, accents, languages would help them do that. We also think internally about, what kinds of use cases do we think WellSaid could be a good fit for, and what do we build out to support those? And then there's also just the reality of, internally, what kind of research are we doing with our TTS, and what can that enable? So we think, externally and kind of internally as well. There are a lot of pieces that go into which voices we build next.
Yeah, and I saw a question in the chat earlier about what are the most common use cases for our avatars. And really, it's whatever your imagination is for applying them. We provide a lot, as you probably already saw in the chat, of e-learning voiceover tools, or we are an e-learning voiceover tool that is very popular with people who are needing to add engaging, informative, helpful voiceover to any kind of educational material. We also do a lot of marketing applications, whether it's like a product video or some sort of, marketing use that is in an audio setting like YouTube, perhaps. Although, anyway, we also do like advertising, audio, programmatic type of injections and things like that, all the way to ebook, audio ebooks, and the API use can be almost anything. So yeah, it's a challenge probably to provide that gamut of voices that are suitable for all of those uses, but Sarah's doing an incredible job.
Well, it's so
uh,
fascinating too. I was just in a meeting with our voice actor who voices Tobin yesterday, and he's asking me what can I do to increase my offerings, and so we're kind of like, well, all right, so do we want to do conversational? Well, his narration style is already so conversational, which makes it so flexible, right? So it's like, well, do we want to do a more like a different narration, a different take on narration? He's going to be doing the promo because I feel like that's the most different from what he currently offers. So, and whereas like a voice like Sophia, there's a real appreciable difference between each of her styles. Like narration is like solidly narration, conversational is like so beautifully like conversational, promo is like so like clearly promo, right? So yeah, there's also there's so many pieces that go into like how exactly we expand in terms of like new avatars, but also how we expand within each avatar.
mm-hmm. I see a lot of people asking about other languages, and that's a question we get a lot. We can say it's in the works, but it's a lot to learn for our model, right?
Yeah, it is. So we have, for English, we've built all kinds of kind of supporting features. We have in V10, we have text normalization, which is a kind of, I don't know, long-winded way of saying it says special things better. So like you can now put in like $20 capital M, and it'll know, oh, that's 20 million. It won't say like $20M, right? So we have all of these kinds of like supporting aspects to that make our English voices so much easier to use, and with V10 even easier to use. And if you think about all of those kinds of nuances for each, and not only like even within English, we have like dialect specific things that we need to consider. But you think about all of that for like Spanish and German and Portuguese. There's a significant kind of engineering lift to get all of those pieces in place. But it is something that we are actively working on. That's as much as I can say.
Great. And in terms of like the other English languages, if you could give a ballpark of when some new voices might be coming out for us to keep an eye or an ear out for.
Yes.
What I did there.
I do. Eyes and ears open. We are planning on releasing some more English voices this quarter.
All right. Very exciting. It's always fun for me to, when we have new voices, get to play around with them and be like, oh, everybody's going to love this one. And,
Yes,
oh, this
same.
is going to be so great.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I feel like we've covered sort of what I called actor to algorithm to avatar, the whole process here. And we're going to get to your questions next. So while you're entering those, quick reminder, we will have the replay out soon. I'll send you an email along with my slide deck, apparently in a PDF. We'll also put that up on our blog and you'll see it in our social media. So do be sure to follow us on LinkedIn if you're not already, and or Twitter while you're at it. And if you have any specific questions that we don't get to today, you can always send those to welcome@WellSaid Labs. That actually comes to me. So I can get those to Sarah as needed. All right. Well,
can I answer Michael McIntyre's question first?
Please, go for it.
So he's asking an update next month. What's included with that? That's the V10 update. So the update that we have in that is increased pronunciation accuracy, more natural delivery. It's a very foundational sort of update, but it also includes a text normalization piece that I talked about. So, you know, if you put in a URL or a date or like a shorthand like MR period, will be read as Mr. And if you want to kind of see what that looks like ahead of time before it goes into Studio as the default option, there is a way for you to beta test. And especially I see people talking about like audio cutoff. Like it feels like the last little piece of my audio clip is like gone, or like it just kind of ends abruptly. There's like a feeling of like abrupt end, even if you can't quite place your finger on it. That's much improved in V10. So if you're having any issues with audio cutoff or like special text or anything like that, you can try out the V10. And if you do, please let us know what you think of it. But to do that, you go into your settings and there's a way to enable multiple TTS. And then when you go to your avatar, there will be a place for you to click from a drop-down beta. And that's the V10 that will be moving into like the default position fairly soon. So if you want to get a sneak experience of that, you know, reach out to support and they can walk you through how to enable beta.
Interesting. I do see some people asking about how do you get pronunciations just right or adjust certain things. And I don't know, Sarah, I think my answer would be to check out the Help Center. There's a lot of resources there. Do you have any other tips or we spent a lot of time yesterday in our company chat working on, we'll kind of group discuss how a customer's trying to get a voice to say this and it's not sounding right. And we'll all be in there trying to figure it out sometimes.
Yeah, with V10, we had, it's with pronunciation, it's just handling a lot of words much more intuitively, but there are still always branded names, right? So like terms that aren't in the dictionary, or very industry specific terms that you want to have pronounced a very specific way. V10 does have a kind of respelling system that allows you to give explicit instructions to the AI about how to pronounce a word at the syllable level and to tell it which syllable to emphasize. it's the first iteration of this kind of system. So it's a little bit, there's a bit of a learning curve to learn how to use it. But once you do, it's really powerful. It's a really powerful tool that allows you to tell the AI exactly how to say a word. And it will work across all of the voices in any kind of sentence context. So
Yeah, and I see Jen, one of our wonderful support folks, is putting some links in the chat here too. We've got the help center there, and then she also shared that support at wellsaidlabs.com. Also for like product requests, if people have voices that they want to request being added, something like that for you to put into your planning, would that go to the support alias as well, or where should?
yes. Yeah, support is always a great place to send that. I believe, I know that our amazing customer success team is so good at handing customer feedback across to us. And that goes into our Slack channel. We see it, everybody sees it. We're able to prioritize, our product's growth based on that feedback. So please tell us what you need. I see a lot of people in the chat talking about the voices being a little bit too fast. And that's something that we're also aware of, and we're building some controls around that, which will come out much later. And controls is probably not quite the right word, but it's a way for us to be able to allow users to potentially tell the voice to be a little bit slower, but in a way that preserves the naturalness that you've come to appreciate about WellSaid. So
Here's
coming
an interesting, yes.
up next on the roadmap.
Wonderful. I see a question here, which is really interesting in our Q&A. Are you surprised by some of the cases where your voices end up being used? What are some publicly released products that use the voices we could check out?
Yes. Yes, I am surprised. I'm surprised when I run content moderation, I see like I get random text. So I see it's almost like a kind of funny poem to see like all of the different use cases in a row. And it's always just amazing to me, like the range of use cases people have. But in terms of like publicly released, something you can check out, Synthesia is one of our partners. They do really cool like video avatars, and they power their video avatars with WellSaid voices, and you should 100% check them out. It's I'll spell that. It's Synthesia. It's a really cool company.
Yes, that is a good one. Let's see, here's another question that I saw in the chat as well. Do we have any plans to include odd sounds such as sighs, coughs, etc.?
Yeah, that's something that we get a request for sometimes, and I would say that we're interested in that. It's not something that we're prioritizing at this time, but it is kind of like it's something that we could do, and it continually comes up as like how would we build that out, and what would that user experience look like, and what kind of listening experiences could these kinds of like effects support. It's kind of along the lines of more character voices, which we get requested sometimes as well. So to bring some kind of to bring some more kind of character, like animation, in terms of like voice liveliness to experiences.
Yeah, here's an interesting one. How, and which I think, especially with V10, will be fun to talk about. How does the AI learn to pronounce words that are spelled the same but pronounced differently?
Yeah.
Example, present or present.
Yes. Yes. Homographs. So the AI is learning, it's not learning words in isolation. So there's a very old form of TTS called concatenation, where the AI just learns how to concatenate like sounds based on like syllables. Our AI, like I said, it's learning soundscapes, so it can learn sound patterns across like a larger array of words. So it can learn like phrases or sentences. And so it's getting smarter with each kind of iteration at knowing contextually, this is like live from, AI studios versus like, how can you live like this, right? Like the two, like live versus live. Sometimes there's not enough context for the AI. So like sometimes the word will occur in a phrase that's very short, and so it's harder for it to know what the context is. And in those cases, we suggest doing a respelling with V10 or with V9 to reach out to support and see if they have tips for suggesting to the AI that it deliver a different pronunciation. But it does look contextually at the sentences that it's delivering.
Yeah, so that's going to keep getting a little better
Yes.
as we go, and it learns more and more how to kind of see the context there. Okay, here's one from John. Do you ever have to go back to a voice talent and ask them to reread maybe months or years after their original reading? Have we ever done that?
Um, yes. So our original set of voices, like Wade and Ava and Alana, Kai, we had an original 8. And they, when we developed the ability for the conversational style and the promo style, we reached back out to them, and a lot of them decided to re-record a new style. Some of them are just now starting to also re-record. So, but yes, yeah, that can happen where we have a bit of time between. It took us a few years to get our AI really solidly performing at the level that it is now, where it's delivering these really realistic, fantastic listening experiences with synthetic voice. Um, so for our newer avatars, we're hoping to add those styles closer to the time of the original recording. But yes, for some of our original voices, they added, a few years after they first started working with us.
Mm. I see a really good question here about the black background in studio, and is there a way to toggle to a white background? Um, that's another thing, more technical requests like that outside of just the voice avatars. We really value that feedback as well. And so, we have sort of a feedback loop for the voice team that Sarah's on, but then also with our engineers to keep them aware of repeated requests from our customers, things that they can prioritize. So if you see some functional things like that in studio, please definitely send those along as well. We log all of that and discuss it all the time. So definitely welcomed feedback from on the technical side as well. Okay, I think we've hit just about everything. I see one more here from Mary about an API for IBM. And we don't create an API for specific use cases. It's the API that then you can use with your product, depending on what that is. A lot of people come up with ways to link different products together through API, but ours is a more general one for a variety of use cases. I'll just cover that. And then let's see, Bonita, I see your questions there about your specific medical terminology questions. And I'm going to have Jen, who's in the chat there, follow up and give you some more specific guidance on some of those, because I know that can be something that is very specific to whatever the terminology is that you work with on a daily basis. So she'll be able to help you with the perfect answers there. So, but Sarah, thank you so much for being here today and explaining this to all of us. I know I've learned quite a bit, even though I work at WellSaid Labs. So I hope our audience has too. And we will be sending out that replay soon. And thanks for coming, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Carolyn. This has been great.
Bye. Have a great rest of your week.